Welcome back to the Rebel's Edge. It's a September 11th, 2025 Rebel's Edge, folks. We got a lot to talk about. Markets are screaming higher, and we'll give you the 411 on that and more on today's Rebel's Edge. Bang. Well, folks, it is September 11th. We do observations because many of us, hopefully most of us, will never forget that some 3,000 people went to sleep on September 10th, 2001, and went to work the next day, whether they were first responders, whether they were working at Cantor Fitz or any of the other firms that were in the World Trade Center, and they didn't go home. And it's affected millions of us. It's affected us through veterans that came back missing limbs and so forth. It's affected us from going through airport security. I mean, so many different things. And believe me, I'd go through airport security 1,000 times in the same day rather than this event happening again. But then yesterday we had Charlie Kirk shot, assassinated at a college meetup. Just unbelievable. The crowds that guy draws for Turning Point USA and all the rest. And now his life is snuffed out by some horrible person. And, you know, Pete, it's like September 11th is becoming more and more a day of mourning in the United States.
It is. There's no doubt about it. The sadness for everybody is brutal. You and I had plenty of friends who were at the World Trade Center as well. So it's, but it's not just there. It's what happened everywhere because of that. So it's this is a sad time, but also, you know, time to reflect and figure out how do we avoid things like this happening and do the very best that we can. And so. It's sad, but we got to press on.
Absolutely. They would want us to, Pete.
Yep.
Charlie would want us to also.
Absolutely.
All right, folks. We dive into the macro. We hit a little bit of that for September 11th because we have to, and for Charlie Kirk because we have to and we should. But macro today, Pete, I'm going to say that the market reaction to a fairly strong core CPI. It moved up to 0.3 from 3.1 a year ago. But the market shrugs it right off and says, we're seeing cuts. And maybe even like Pete says, we're going to see a 50 basis point cut. That's the reaction, Pete.
Yep, I think you're right. Up from a macro perspective, the data is what we were looking at. We talked about this earlier in the week to see what it would look like, and it's got everybody pretty excited about the fact that, hey, has it lifted up a little bit? Sure, but when you look at that data, but the idea of cuts is still there, and it's gotten stronger. It feels like, John, and that's why we're seeing the markets moving the way they are. Quarter point is definitely on, but is it 50? You know, that's something that you and I have been kind of kicking around, and more you start to wonder. It could be. Maybe it slides a little bit more towards the quarter, but if it were 50, I would not be shocked. That's the way I'd phrase it.
No, and obviously traders are all bulled up about it, Pete. And as we go to fantastic futures, folks, I'm going to let Pete handle the VIX, but I'm going to say natural gas broke 3 and is now under $3 per million British thermal unit, or BTU, in case you didn't know what that stood for. But that is going to be my fantastic future today, Pete. Nat gas down 2%.
How about this, John? Silver, gold, Bitcoin, Ethereum. Now, are they making monstrous moves in the last week? No. But they just keep on adding to it, right? I mean, it's interesting to see, and gold approaching, 3,700, and silver approaching 42, and you take a look at Bitcoin, it's not that far off of those all-time highs. It's getting closer once again, and Ethereum as well. So I think it's interesting to see how on a week where they're not making much of a move, it's still interesting because they're up a couple of percent across the board, all four. So that's one thing. And I think as far as the volatility index, boy, it's gotten tighter and tighter and tighter. And we're basically sitting anywhere between, call it 15, 30 cents below, 30 above. It's something very close to that. So the volatility index is indicating that folks are feeling fairly comfortable right now about things, I would say, as far as the S&P in terms of some of that movement. But how long will this last? I think it can last a little bit longer. I think there are still some reasons why this thing can hang around down here. But at some point, we are going to get a few spikes here and there. We're not going to sit here forever. So I just would warn people that understand where we are. And protection maybe isn't the stupidest thing in the world to have right now.
No, it's probably a good day to remind people of that, Pete. Yeah. All right, folks, we are lucky enough to have the one and only Jeff Garbaz, who basically is one of the two-person master class that they give every morning for the Rebel Setup morning call with Ryan Mastro, and then the Rebel Squeeze Play, the Rebel Squeeze Play Elite, all of these great services brought to you by the one and only Jeff Garbaz. Jeff, take it away, sir.
Morning, guys. It's a pretty interesting morning. We got another look on short interest, which we just wrote up. And the bottom line is the NASDAQ went up by just a little bit, 17 basis points, but it was enough to put in another all-time high. And New York Stock Exchange went up by 65 basis points. So definitely they're still adding to short positions. And if we look at like where they're at right now, here's the number. We started the year at 14.468 billion, and now we're at almost 17 billion. And NYSE started at 15.4, and now we're at 17.8. So we're almost at like crazy numbers right now. And on top of it, year to date, the short sellers have added on New York by 15%, and that the NASDAQ number is 17%. So it's just a continual movement higher by the shorts. So
would you
right
say
now,
that's doubling down, Jeff? Are they doubling down on their bets?
Yes, they are, or they're just going to completely new bets, which we'll talk about it. Some of those new bets, which are kind of having a tough day today for sure.
Yeah.
So if we look at the New York, if we look at the type 1 short squeezes, about 4% of stocks now are in a short squeeze. 5% are doing well, but there's light short positions. And then where the shorts have been correct, that's about 8%. So if they improve, they become short squeezes. So if we take the fours and if we had 4% and 8%, that gets us to about 12% of names potentially being squeezed that are just short squeezes or the shorts correct right now. But that number, there's also a few more in there. That gets us to about 20% of all stocks potentially being in a short squeeze right now. And so if we look at the change, here are the biggest changes. The three biggest sector changes came from food and staples retailing, media, and semiconductors. So those are places where the shorts are adding to stuff. And I thought this was pretty interesting. We have an indicator we call the Erlanger commitment of short sellers. And one thing we do is we track how the short sellers are doing. So all the sectors that are green right here, this is what we call dumb short selling. So short sellers who short stocks and traditionally lose money. These are those sectors, commercial services, autos, retailing, semiconductors, which we talked about, household personal products. And then the red down here are where they are actually doing okay right now. And remember, this year so far, 50% of stocks are up and 50% of stocks are down. So from that, I thought we'd take a quick look at some of the biggest changes. And if we first go to New York, we can see that the biggest change was CNQ, Synovus Energy, Snap, Ambev. The one that really sticks out, though, like a sore thumb, is on the NASDAQ side. Look at what's number 4 that they were shorting last month. They added just 124 million shares to Opendoor Technologies, which is John. How much is that up this morning?
67%.
Not a good day if you've been short that and been adding to it. Here's a nice chart of that. Let's take a look. You can see. I mean, look at the additions. The gray is the absolute number of shares short. Look at how they've been adding to the short position on this thing since May. So, and obviously it's been in a lot of UOA type of stuff the last month or two as it's been going. It's been a great one.
Mm-hmm.
So that's our quick summary of the latest short interest that you can get in Rebel Squeeze Play Pro whenever we get an update every 2 weeks.
Cool.
Thank you very much, Jeff. That's fantastic stuff, as
Thanks,
always.
guys.
Thanks.
Boom. Well, Jeff does bring the heat, folks, and we're in fact going to talk, Pete and I are, about Opendoor Tech in just a moment. But first, we're going to remind you about the virtual pass, because if you would like to hear from Jeff Garbaz on September 19th and 20th, he will be on stage. Pete will be on stage. Grant Cardone will be on stage. I'll be on stage. Mark, Ryan Mastro, Brian McCormick. I mean, we've got so many folks that are going to be on stage showing you guys live trades, how we trade them, as well as giving you a lot of great education on the Saturday, the 20th. So if you want that, if you want to see us trade live during a triple witch, because that's a triple witch, Pete. It's actually a quad witch, some people call it, but September 19th is an expiration day, folks, and it's going to be lively. If you want to be part of it, scan that QR code. Remember, everybody that buys that virtual pass also gets $200 that they can apply to education or subscriptions like Jeff's Rebel setup or the Rebel Squeeze Play. So make sure you scan the QR code, and we hope to see you virtually September 19th and 20th. Yeah. Pete, let's dive into Opendoor Tech, shall we?
Let's do it.
All right. Well, Opendoor, what happened? Well, shares jumped 20%, then 30%, then 40%. Now they're up 67%. It pushes all the way up towards $10, Pete. And to Jeff's point, just in the last month, the stock has gone, as you guys can see, because I'll show you some unusual activity as well. But look at that spike to the upside, Pete. They bring back two of the co-founders of the firm. They bring in a guy that was the COO for Shopify, happens to be an Armenian dude, Pete, Kaz Najatian. He is going to be Najatian. He is going to be the chief operating officer. And yeah, we had unusual activity in this name. The unusual activity was upside call buying when the stock was $5, then when it was $6, then when it was $7 just a couple days ago. And how did it work out? Pretty well, with the stock going up 67%, right, Pete?
Yeah, not such a bad run, John. It started off just like you said, though. It was up, then it was up, then it was up even more. And then one thing just ties right into what Jeff was talking about. But I mean, I looked at the short interest in this name, and it's up well over 20%. So that's an ugly squeeze that those guys are feeling right now out of that, John. I mean, absolutely incredible. And like you said, the change of all these various names or names that are coming back, and then you've got these co-founders and the investment of $40 million. There really is a lot going on. And this is one of those names where when you're seeing there and you just don't think it's even going to come to any kind of fruition to it. But when you see these unusual option activities in Opendoor, this is one of those names, because of the short squeeze, that actually does make it a possibility to make some sort of a huge jump. And that's exactly what we're seeing today. We've seen it over the previous couple of days, but it's today where it's absolutely incredible what they're doing. And it's 67%, John. I don't know. I can't remember the last time I saw one of these that made it that kind of a jump. It probably goes all the way back to the pandemic, when we're seeing GameStop and some of those kind of names, and some of the runs that we were seeing there out of those short squeezes. But the interesting thing is the volume is there, but I would have expected it to be even more volume than we're seeing right now. It's a lot. It's double at least, but I would have expected it to almost be like a 5X by now, maybe even a 10X, just because so much is happening within this stock.
Well, how about we switch over to another stock that is not doing something that's going to drive it up 67%, but they did officially jump into the robo-taxi market, Pete. That somebody is Amazon. AMZN shares, moving up with the market more or less, but basically the e-commerce giant acquired Zoox back in 2020, Pete, ZOOX. And if you wondered what they were doing with it, well, now they're telling you. They're going to be basically given free rides on the Las Vegas Strip, and they plan to expand in the city. This is a robo-taxi company, Pete, Zoox, and as soon as they can charge, they're going to start charging. This puts them squarely against two of the biggies in the business that are in the robo-taxi space.
Yeah, the biggies, Waymo and Tesla. I mean, this is an area that is absolutely, it's totally interesting. And I'm not surprised. Amazon does such a great job, John, of looking out into the future. And the fact that they did this in 2020, they paid like 1.3 billion. My guess would be this thing's probably already got a value well over 1.3 billion. And into the future, I would expect that thing to go multiples of that. I mean, it's just amazing what we're seeing with the robo-taxi. As you said, right now, it's for free. The service itself, but they're scheduled to get this thing at other locations. Right now, it's Vegas. That's where everybody seems to want to go for this thing. But we're still not too terribly far off of those 52-week highs in Amazon either, John. It's not quite there right this moment, but not that far. The interesting part here again is a little bit lighter in volume, the stock volume, and that's a little surprise. Maybe it's just earlier in the day or something. I'm not really sure why, but it's interesting to see that. But this is going to be really, really just another one of these notches in the belt for Amazon. What they've done over the last 10, 15, 20 years, John. I mean, most people probably don't even realize this, but this used to be a book company, right? I mean, and look where they are right now. So it's amazing. And they've done a great job of what they've bought, how they've bought it, and the price they've paid. Very much like Meta, in my opinion, where they've kind of, bought these companies and at the right time, at the right price, and they've done really, really well because of that. Well,
RNA, Pete, is a bioscience company, and it was down as much as 28% today. Traded down to $35 in the pre. The company announced plans to raise $500 million, $500 million in an underwriting of common stock. That tends to put pressure on the stock. This one has recovered more than $3 or about 10 or 11% off that bottom that it put in this morning, Pete. But they've got a bunch of clinical stage programs going on. So I'm going to throw it to you and see whether or not you think, will this money get them to the finish line with any of these candidates?
I think it's going to help. There's no doubt about it. They obviously felt that was a need that they needed to do, John. It's interesting to me because when I look at the balance sheet itself, the balance sheet looks absolutely, phenomenal for a biotech type company. Usually you don't see balance sheets that look as good as this one does, but for whatever reason, they wanted to raise that money. So the 500 million that you were just talking about, that's going to be pretty interesting. They've got they've got 3 different late stage clinical programs that are going on now, looking for that approval. That's the next step. So solid balance sheet. Like I said, I see this thing and I understand the pressure because that's really what's pressed this thing down is that acquisition of that dollar value. But I don't know. I think when I look at this one, I'm more apt to think that this thing could bounce right back in the not too distant future. So I'm not saying that it's going to, I'm just saying that it could. And because of that, I'd be more interested in potentially looking at options in this one as a possibility to maybe recoup, to get back up where it was after all this selling is done.
Well, The opposite of that is Centene Corporation, Pete, CNC. This one, they had announced they were going to be speaking at the Deutsche Bank Healthcare Summit today. They did that. At the event, the management had said that they're going to discuss their full year forecast of $1.75 versus street estimates of $1.62. Well, they did that and more, Pete, and the stock popped yesterday in anticipation of this and popped more today.
And part of that anticipation was that United Health, John, talking about their 25 outlook as well. So the possibility of that, and then looking what these guys have been able to do with their forecast. I'll tell you what, you look at the free cash flow in this name at $1.5 billion with the strong balance sheet. There's a lot of reasons why Centene should probably be on everybody's list as far as maybe at least looking at it and looking at it a little bit closer to see what they could potentially where this stock could go. I'm pretty bullish about this one. You know, United Health has had a lot of different reasons to be both bullish but also bearish over the last, months and maybe even almost a year or so now. But it's been on an interesting run of late, and a little bit more of that coming yesterday. I think between these two, I think Centene comes with a little less volatility, but United Health might be the one that has a lot more room to the upside from where it is even still right now. So interesting to see what's going on in that industry for sure.
Absolutely, Pete. Well, we know you guys love it, and we're happy to share it whenever we have an interesting sports short. And today, it's none other than, once again, Pat McAfee, and he's very effusive. How you like that word, Pete? Effusive in his praise of one J.J. McCarthy, who kept it together when a lot of folks probably were giving up.
Whenever you talk to the Michigan coaches about what's so impressive about J.J. McCarthy, they're like, well, obviously the arm talent's insane. We don't really have to use as much because we got a good run game. By the way, we run the ball a lot. He's a potential top 10 quarterback, a top guy. And also, whenever he was a freshman, he went into a huddle in the middle of the game. And I guess the way he commanded the huddle, like senior offensive linemen who wanted to hate this little pretty boy, come in there were like, damn, we like the way this guy operates. I guess his intangibles of leadership and
we've talked about that,
have been very evident since high school. And I think what Aaron Jones said to the Speakeasy podcast, third or fourth quarter, they were losing. And he looked around and he said, is there anywhere else you'd rather be? To the huddle, and then he gives the play call, and then he gets right in there. And Aaron Jones was like, damn. And Aaron said that he had been speaking about his leadership and how he's a different mental capacity than anybody he's ever been around. That's what everybody has said about this guy. So in the fourth quarter, whenever it shows up the way that it shows up, everybody that had been talking about him, high school, college, Herb Street, literally everybody that knows, like, that's the most predictable J.J. McCarthy shit that there is.
I'll tell you, John, the kid is special. You and I were talking about this before we started today, and you were pointing out some of the things about his record. We've been going back in time talking about this because, of course, he got drafted not this year but the year before, but then he had the injury, so he had to sit out. That was right in the first preseason game. John, the guy's a winner at every single level. I mean, he's right out of LaGrange, Illinois, went to the Catholic school not far from where I was living when I was living out there in Western Springs, and all he does is win. Then he goes to IMG. All he does is win. Then he goes to Michigan. All he does is win. And then he gets drafted, and the Vikings moved up to make that draft. Now, is he going to have some bad games? Yeah, he probably will. Who doesn't? But this kid has so much moxie, or whatever you want to call it, that he brings that to the table. I mean, the guy won a national title as the quarterback at Michigan. I think that speaks for itself. So, yeah, he's a special kid. If there's a quarterback out there over the last couple of drafts, I think he would have to be ranked somewhere very, very close. Jaden Daniels, unbelievable year last year, but J.J. McCarthy, we'll see what he can show us. But he showed us he can come back with the 21 points in the fourth quarter.
Yep, absolutely, loved it. All right, well, let's hit the rest of the sports, Pete, leading into Thursday night football. Dun, dun. Dun, 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 dun.
Well, we got two teams or schools out of the state of Georgia, John, that I find pretty interesting, and I think they're some of the better games for the weekend. One of them is that Clemson's playing Georgia Tech. Now, Clemson has slipped down a little bit. They're now at number 12, and the reason for that is they haven't played very well. They struggled to beat Troy. That wasn't so good. They had a terrible offense against LSU. It was a home game, a terrible offense against LSU. And you just wonder what's wrong with these guys. They're 1-1, so it's not like you're sinking a ship of some sort. but they had a quarterback that, all of us, including me, thought could potentially be a Heisman type quarterback. And so far, they really just haven't showed us much yet. So they've got Georgia Tech, who's already 2-0. They're playing pretty good football. And then the other one is, how about Georgia playing Tennessee? I mean, that's got to be one of the fun games that exists out there still to this day. Big SEC challenge. And, both of them have been in the spot where have they played anybody yet? No. Now they get to play somebody. They're playing each other. And I think this is going to be pretty cool. Good old Rocky Top, John. Number 6 against number 15. I think that's going to be special. I'll throw in a little bonus one, which is something we talked about yesterday. But how about South Florida going and playing against Miami? That could be a really, really amazing game. Now, Miami, do they have much more talent? Yeah. But South Florida has already proven with what they've done in the first 2 weeks, a pretty damn good football team at South Florida.
Yep. And Miami, should be ready for them, Pete. Should be. Because they've seen what they did to good competition in those first 2 games. Yep. Clemson, I'll throw this out, Pete. Yeah, you and I spoke about it already a couple days this week about how they just hadn't looked good against Troy and so forth. But for those who want to be optimistic, I'll give them this bit of encouragement, Pete. They went down 16-zip. They came back with 27 straight points. Mm-hmm. So had they not gone down 16-zip and instead it was 27-3, you'd say, yeah, they pretty much mashed them up pretty good. But you can't do that. And in the second quarter, they're sitting there looking at the scoreboard, 16-zip. They could have folded, but they did a little bit of the J.J. McCarthy. They came back, scored 27 points in the next 2 quarters, and walk away with the victory, even though, of course, it's sort of I guess it probably didn't taste as sweet, Pete, as a victory normally does. Yeah. But this week, they've got a much better team that they're playing at Georgia Tech. Mm-hmm. But I think they should be able to win.
They should. And I believe in Dabo. So, I'm all in on that guy. I don't know what's been happening early on and why the offense hasn't been able to do as much as they'd mm-hmm. like to do, but they've stumbled a little early. Hopefully they figured it out. How about this one for the NFL, John? San Francisco is going to be playing the Saints. And the reason I pull this game out is I find it really interesting because here's the problem for San Francisco, which was the problem last year. Remember last year, and I've brought this up many times, all the injuries that they had, right? I mean, you look over and Kittle had some issues. McCaffrey was out. Your left tackle is gone. Defensive players are hurt everywhere. Unfortunately, John, it's starting to play out a little bit more again. And here's what you've got. You've got Brock Purdy, who potentially is out for this game. Now, right now, he's considered doubtful, but he's got 2 different injuries that he's dealing with. So they're talking about Mac Jones, who, by the way, McCaffrey said, hey, look, this Mac Jones is a lot better than everybody wants to give him credit for. This guy can read. He reads the defenses very, very quickly. He can get the ball out. So he's got a lot of confidence about what Mac Jones can really do, John. But you've got George Kittle is on IR right now because of his hamstring. So here's the lineup. Purdy's doubtful. Jennings is questionable. Kittle is on IR. One of the offensive linemen is also questionable. But by the way, the kid from St. John's University in Minnesota, John, he's a great player. Ben Barsh, I love the kid, but he's questionable. And Ayuk is out. So again, this year, they're getting kind of hit. I mean, we're only at week 1. Now we're going to be playing week 2, but we're at week 1, and San Francisco is pretty beat up right now. Can they do it, John, against the Saints, or what's your thoughts on this one? I think this makes for a really interesting game because of the fact of all the injuries with San Francisco right now.
Well, I'll say, can they do it? Of course, because on any given Sunday, but all those players, and they are players too. You're talking about all pros when Pete's rattling through that list, folks, of the players that aren't going to be playing, or at least are doubtful in the case of Purdy, doubtful to be able to play. Nothing against Mac Jones, but I think the team really responds to Purdy. They'll obviously try to win, but a not great Saints team could look great this Sunday is what I'm saying, Pete, because they are not great. I think they've done a lot of things wrong in their drafting and all the rest, but I don't know that San Francisco's going to be in shape to beat them on the road down in Louisiana. The good thing is the Superdome is air conditioned, because if it wasn't, Pete, they would be sweating and sweltering in that high humidity that New Orleans is famous for in September and October. But I'd say I think the home team wins this one. And do they win it outright? I think so.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting battle, John. I mean, like you said, I mean, New Orleans has been struggling for quite a while now, unfortunately. They've had a lot of talent there, but then they've kind of blown it. They haven't been able to do much with the talent. They lost the coach not too long ago. They actually cut him or got rid of him. So there's just a lot of things going on for the Saints, and they are the home team, and they're a professional team. So let's never forget that. So at this level, if you've got somebody this banged up, I would say that you're probably right. New Orleans, I think, would probably be the favorite. And with Mac Jones, we have never really seen him give the kind of performance that you would have expected when he was coming out of college, because he was a pretty high pick. So I don't know. I love what McCaffrey's saying. I think he's trying to be very complimentary of where Mac Jones is. But if San Francisco's got all those guys out, now that could change. If some of those guys actually are able to play, I think then maybe San Francisco's got a shot. But if all those names that we just rattled off are all sitting on the bench in street clothes, I think San Francisco's got their hands full.
Well, I don't disagree. I think San Francisco is in a world of trouble down there in New Orleans, a city where you can get into some trouble, as I know all too well. But I will say, Pete, that my game is tonight's game. I'm really looking forward to this one. And I think the Commanders going into Lambeau, I like that one. Yeah. And I like the Packers to win this one by more than the spread, as I've said before. So we'll see, because we'll be back Monday next week to talk about it. Or you could follow Pete on Twitter. That's at Pete Nigerian, or me on Twitter at JON Nigerian. My dad was JOHN. So with that said, for the last Rebels Edge of the week, Pete, we'll be back Monday at what time?
We're going to be here at 1 o'clock, John, Eastern time.
1 o'clock. See you then.